Imagine this. A surgeon finishes a delicate operation on your heart. She takes a printer, a small desktop-sized printer, and before she closes the chest, she prints a tiny, hair-thin electronic sensor directly onto the surface of your new heart valve. Not a sticker, not a clip-on, a circuit, grown onto living tissue in real time while the heart is still beating. That sounds like science fiction. It isn't. In 2026, a team at Rice University in Houston, Texas, led by a materials scientist named Yong Lin Kong, published a paper in Science Advances showing exactly that. They printed working electronic circuits onto a cow's femur, onto a polymer knee replacement, onto a living leaf, and yes, in principle, onto you. But here's the part that should stop you cold. The real breakthrough isn't the printing. The real breakthrough is how they print, using a beam of focused microwaves, narrower than a human hair, that can heat metal particles to melting point without burning the living thing underneath. This is the story of how that works, why it matters more than you think, and what happens when the boundary between your body and your devices quietly dissolves. You probably think of 3D printing as something that makes plastic toys. Maybe a phone case, maybe a custom wrench. The term additive manufacturing, its posher name, has been around since the 1980s. And for most of that time, the materials it could handle were things like plastic, metal powder, ceramic, kitchen gadgets, jet engine parts, dental implants. What it could not do, until now, was touch anything alive. The reason is simple. The way 3D printers make electronic circuits is by laying down special inks that contain tiny particles of copper, silver, or gold. Then the printer has to fuse those particles together into a continuous conductive pathway. That fusion step is called annealing, and it usually means one of two things. Either you put the whole object into a furnace, or you zap it with a laser. Either way, you need a lot of heat. And heat, as you know, kills living cells. For a polymer, that's fine. For a polymer knee replacement, fine. For a printed heart valve that will go inside a human chest, not fine. For a printed circuit sitting on the surface of someone's liver, monitoring tumor growth, not fine. For a circuit printed onto a leaf, to be clear, also not fine. Leaves are remarkably delicate. The heat barrier is the reason nobody could print electronics onto biology. That barrier just fell. Let me walk you through what Yong Lin Kong's team actually did, because the trick is elegant. The old way, heat the entire object. Cook everything, including the thing you wanted to keep. The new way, heat only the metal particles, and only for a microsecond at a time. How? Microwaves. But not the microwaves in your kitchen. These are microwaves that have been focused into a beam smaller than a human hair. Kong's group describes it as a dot less than 200 millionths of a meter across, about 200 nanometers, the size of a small virus. The kit is compact enough to fit onto a desktop 3D printer. It's not a room-sized industrial machine. It's the kind of thing that, in a few years, could sit on a lab bench next to a centrifuge. The mechanism? A special resonator amplifies the microwave energy, and a tapered tip focuses the beam. The microwave energy is absorbed almost entirely by the metal particles in the ink, copper, silver, gold, and barely at all by the surrounding tissue. The metal heats up, the metal fuses, the metal becomes a continuous wire. The living cells around it? They don't even register the temperature change. It's the difference between putting a marshmallow over a campfire, it chars, and using a magnifying glass to focus sunlight onto a single point. Only the point burns. Same energy, same physics, completely different outcome because of precision. And here's the second clever part. By adjusting the power of the microwave beam, Kong can change the microstructure of the ink. Lower power, the metal particles stay loosely packed, high resistance. Higher power, the particles fuse tightly, low resistance. This means he can print regions of higher and lower conductivity along the same wire. In other words, he can print resistors directly into the circuit, in line, during the same print run. No separate component, no soldering. The resistor and the wire are the same piece of metal, just printed at two different densities. That sounds like a small manufacturing detail. It isn't. It's the difference between a sensor that needs to be assembled from 10 parts and a sensor that is a single continuous print. Now let's talk about the living side. 3D printing has already been used to make biological tissues for transplant. Heart valves, printed from a patient's own cells. Tracheas, printed and seeded with cartilage. Skin grafts, printed directly onto burn wounds. None of this is new. The first lab-grown bladder was transplanted into a human back in 2006. We are 2 decades into the era of printing body parts. What has been missing is nervous system. The printed organs look right, feel right, and in many cases work right. But they are deaf and dumb. They have no way to tell you, or your doctor, how they are doing. You don't realize how much you rely on that feedback until it's gone. Your real heart, the one you've had since before you were born, has nerve endings that feed back to your brain. You feel your heart race. You feel it skip. You feel the chest tightness of angina. These are signals. A printed heart valve, made of living cells but not connected to your nervous system, has no way to send those signals. The only way you and your surgeon know it's failing is when you start showing symptoms, and by then the problem is often advanced. Kong's technology changes that. By printing a circuit directly onto the valve becomes a wireless sensor. It can report in real time the mechanical stress on the valve leaflets, the temperature at the valve site, the early signs of inflammation, the slow calcification that means the valve is starting to fail. That data goes to a small external receiver, a stick-on patch on your chest, an app on your phone, and from there to your cardiologist's dashboard. Imagine getting a text message. Your new valve stress has increased 12% in the last week. Schedule a follow-up. Not, your valve failed and you're in the ER. That's the difference between a body part and a smart body part. Now, here's the part of the paper that doesn't get quoted in the headlines but should. The Rice team also printed a working humidity sensor onto a living leaf. A real photosynthesizing, wilting if you squint at it wrong leaf. And the leaf kept doing leaf things afterward. Water transport, gas exchange, the slow work of pulling carbon dioxide out of the air. The circuit was, in a real sense, integrated into the plant's biology. Why does that matter? Because a plant with a printed sensor is a plant that can tell you when it is thirsty, when it is sick, when it is being eaten by something. That sounds frivolous until you think about the global food system. Agriculture uses roughly 70% of the world's fresh water, and most of that water is wasted on overwatered fields. A leaf that texts the farmer, "I'm low on water," is not a curiosity. It is a tool that could change how we feed 10 billion people. But the deeper point is this. Kong's technique is the first printing method that treats living tissue as a substrate, not as a casualty. Every previous electronic printing method treated the thing it was printing on as a surface to be tolerated. The new method treats it as a partner. That has implications we are only beginning to see. Print a circuit onto a nerve, and the nerve can be read. Print a circuit onto a brain slice, and you can record neural activity directly from living tissue. Print a circuit onto a stem cell colony, and you can watch a heart develop in real time, beat by beat, with the developmental signals streaming to a screen. In other words, this is not just a medical tool, it is a research tool. It is a window into how living systems work, opened for the first time at a resolution we have never had. Let's bring this back to your body because that's where it lands. 3 places this hits you in the next 10 years in order of how soon. First, the pill you can swallow. Kong's team explicitly mentions ingestible diagnostic devices, computerized pills that you swallow like a vitamin, that travel through your digestive tract, and that report back what they find. Today's ingestible cameras are passive. They take pictures. Tomorrow's ingestible devices will be active. They will measure pH, temperature, the concentration of inflammatory markers, the presence of blood where blood shouldn't be, the metabolite profile of your gut microbiome. They'll do it for 24 hours, then exit naturally. The clinical use case. You have stomach pain that comes and goes. Your doctor doesn't know if it's an ulcer, IBS, or something worse. Today, the answer is an endoscopy, a tube down your throat, sedation, a day off work. Tomorrow, the answer is you swallow a pill at breakfast, go about your day, and the data lands in your doctor's inbox by dinner. The research use case. Clinical trials for new gut drugs currently rely on stool samples and invasive biopsies. Ingestible sensors would let researchers track drug effects continuously, in real time, in the actual environment the drug is supposed to work in. Trials would be smaller, faster, and more accurate. Second, the implant that texts your doctor. We have been implanting medical devices for decades. Pacemakers, cochlear implants, deep brain stimulators for Parkinson's, spinal cord stimulators for chronic pain. What all of these have in common is that they are dumb endpoints. They deliver a therapy. They do not, with limited exceptions, report back on how the patient is doing. Kong's technology would change that. Print a strain gauge onto a replacement hip, and the hip can tell your orthopedic surgeon in real time how it's bearing load. Print a circuit onto a neural stimulator lead, and the lead can report the local electrical environment around a deep brain stimulator, letting doctors tune the therapy more precisely. Print a sensor onto a tissue graft, and the graft can be monitored for early signs of rejection, the body's immune system starting to attack the transplant. In every case, the shift is the same, from a device that does something to you to a device that does something with you, in conversation, for the life of the implant. Third, the skin that knows it's being touched. This is the longer horizon application, but the one that will most directly touch your life. Kong's group has shown that circuits can be printed onto polymers used in replacement joints. The natural next step is printing onto materials that mimic skin, flexible, stretchable, biocompatible. Within a decade, a smart bandage that monitors a wound's healing in real time is plausible. Within 20, a continuous health monitor worn like a second skin. No battery needed because the circuit scavenges energy from your body heat is plausible. You already wear a smartwatch that counts your steps. Imagine a thin film patch on your chest that measures your blood oxygen continuously, your cortisol levels through sweat, your hydration through skin temperature, your early signs of infection through inflammatory markers in interstitial fluid. And imagine it lasts a month, costs pennies, and doesn't need charging. That is the trajectory this technology opens. So let's go back to the surgeon and the heart. She's printing a circuit onto a heart valve. The patient doesn't know it yet, but that circuit is going to live inside them for the next 15 years, sending tiny reports. I'm working. I'm working. I'm starting to wear down. Schedule a checkup. I'm working. It will do this without batteries. It will do this without wires passing through the chest wall. It will do this because a team in Houston figured out how to heat a piece of metal to melting point using a beam of focused microwaves, narrower than a human hair. applied for a microsecond, in a dot smaller than a virus. The strange thing is, this isn't even the most interesting part. The most interesting part is what happens when 1 million procedures like this have happened. When the inside of every human body is, in some quiet sense, networked. When your heart, your gut, your brain, your bones are all quietly keeping a journal, and your doctor has the only key. We are about to live inside our medical records. The question is no longer, can we do this? We can. The question is whether we will be ready as a society for what it means to have a body that reports. The body you have right now is the last silent one you will ever own. A printer, a beam of microwaves, a leaf, a heart, and a question that hasn't fully arrived yet.